what it is. Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs. Today in the studio, folks, I've got a real treat for you. They call her MommaLee, but Debbie Lee in the house. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Good, excellent. And if you guys don't know who MommaLee is, she is the, I would say, mother of the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq.
Correct.
The very first one.
Yeah.
How many total were killed there?
Oh man, I don't even know anymore what the
Not
exact totals were. We've lost quite a few SEALs between Afghanistan and Iraq. Yeah.
Dang, every time you think, SEAL, you don't think they could die. They're like heroes.
Yeah. Well, we've lost a lot in different helicopter incidents. Operation Red Wing, which was a year before Mark was killed. That was Marcus Luttrell, and he was the only survivor out of that one. And then Extortion 13. We lost 31 that day, and so there were a lot of in those mass casualties. But these are warriors that are out there on the front line. They're in there, and especially in Iraq, there were so many IEDs and stuff, so that they were out on patrol. Their chances of something happening were much higher. Some of them changed the way they would do the operations. It used to be just nighttime, and they didn't do it with any other branches of the military to do things, especially Mark's unit, Task Unit Bruiser. They were doing a lot in support of our Marines, of our Army, being down on the ground with them, going out on daytime operations. And that's the reason that Ramadi changed so drastically was, because of Task Unit Bruiser, because of Jocko and his leadership with that team, and because of the Marines and Army that they partnered with there to make that place change so much. I'm the first Gold Star mom in history to be in the combat zone. Actually went out on patrol 3 different times with the 1st or the 4th Cav. Nothing was happening. I wasn't being fired on. Not that something couldn't have happened.
Did they make you wear a vest?
Oh, yeah. I wore the body armor. They wouldn't let me carry a gun, though. I'm like, wait, that's not fair. I need to have a weapon.
That isn't fair. Yeah, why wouldn't they?
I guess because I'm a civilian.
Who cares? See, that's what I mean. Like, dude, listen. Not dude. MommaLee, listen.
That's good. I'm used to guys talking to me. So,
what do you think the government, what do you think of the government?
Wow, that would take a couple more podcasts for us to get into. I think we definitely have changed. We're not the same country that my son gave his life for. It's what used to be right is now wrong. What used to be wrong is now right. Nothing makes any sense that we're doing. We look at Afghanistan and the major leadership failure that happened there. We had 13 more families that became Gold Star families that should not have happened. That did not need to happen. And I think that's one of the biggest failures I've seen from our White House and from our senior military leaders in my lifetime.
What exactly happened?
When we pulled out of Afghanistan?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, from the media, all we hear is, well, we did it too quick, and everyone's got their opinions, but like, how did it get 13?
Well, we heard testimony this week in the White House of one of the, I believe it was a Marine that was there who survived it. He's an amputee now, but he said they had orders to call in. They saw the suicide bomber that caused that. And they called in for permission to shoot him and were not given permission, even though it would not have harmed anybody else around there. And they could have stopped that attack. That's unconscionable.
See, that's another reason why maybe I didn't make it in the military.
Yeah.
Because I would have shot him. I wouldn't ask for permission.
Well, and I think we look back at Operation Red Wing. That was the issue they had there. What do they do now that we've captured, these, are they shepherds? Are they, goat herders? Are they terrorists? What's their mission out here? Well, if we kill them and they're not, we're all going to Leavenworth.
Yeah, but hey, listen, war is war. I think if you're in war, there are no consequences.
I'm a little less merciful when it comes there.
Yeah, but not when it comes to like killing people.
Yes.
Like if it's a war and I'm over there with a gun and people are out to kill me, don't tell me who I can kill and who I can't kill.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm a big murderer and I want everybody dead. It's like I'm going to protect my own ass first and foremost. Yeah. So if in a situation I need to kill somebody that I believe is a threat to me or my people, then I'm going to kill that individual.
Yeah, we've gotten too politically correct in America, both stateside and in the rules of engagement that are given to our veterans.
Even police officers are doing it.
It's ridiculous.
There was a school shooting where the police, it was just not too long ago, it's all over the news. I don't know. You're probably in it way more than I am because I listen for a split second, see what's going on, and I try to keep negative shit out of my head.
Yeah.
you being, the mother of the first SEAL to get killed probably are involved, and you're active, and you're out there, talking and raising money and helping other ones, I'm sure.
Very much so.
Matter of fact, I know with americasmightywarriors.com or .org, by the way. So you're involved more. So I might sound ignorant when I talk about it, but the police literally would not let someone go into a children's school when there's a gunman in there shooting children.
Yeah, what's your purpose? What are you supposed to be doing?
I know, but why do you need permission?
Yes.
Like if I were a police officer, I wouldn't have asked for fucking permission.
Yeah.
I would have went in there and found the dipshit shooting up a school, and I'd have killed his ass.
Yeah.
Like instantly. And I wouldn't have waited for my chief or whoever the hell they listen to.
Yeah, you should be
Our
trained.
chief
This
wouldn't
is
give
our
me
job.
permission.
This is what we do.
I don't need permission. I'm going in there. I'm a police officer. I'm sworn by law.
Yeah. That's what I said. We've gotten too politically correct in everything that we do.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want it to be a governmental thing because, again, everyone's all divided on whatnot. But I'm always curious as to what military thinks of the government. Like what? Because I told you my story, and I'm thinking I don't want to be property of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
Because sometimes who's in charge? What are they having us do?
Yeah.
Like the whole vaccination or you get kicked out. What'd you think of that?
That was a national security, risk for us. We lost so many Navy SEALs that refused to get that vaccination.
Not only that,
now that they found that
it ain't working.
Yeah,
it
and
doesn't
it's like,
work.
okay, so are we reinstating them? Are we giving them their? No, we haven't heard anything done that way.
See, again, that's
Why
stupid.
are they not getting their back pay? That wasn't something they did that was wrong.
See, again, stupid. We give Ukraine billions and billions of dollars, but we can't pay the SEALs back pay.
Agreed. It's ridiculous. And
Or
a lot of them
anybody's
got
back pay.
dishonorable discharges. So then when they do go out and try to find work,
Well,
that's
again,
on their record. How can that be dishonorable? Are you kidding me? And all the money that we invested in
what's
all the
dishonorable?
years.
Not getting a vaccine?
Yes, because they didn't get the vaccination, then they're getting other than honorable, maybe not dishonorable, but still that impacts when people look at it. It's not an honorable discharge. And the time frame that these guys were in, that they served back to back to back deployments. And we're going to say you weren't honorable. I can't tell you, but they're way more honorable than anybody else that made them get out because of what they did.
Hey, and you know what? Let me tell you something else. Like, I think when you go to war and you come back, if you're injured in any way, like not in any way, but actually injured to where you're injured for life.
Yeah.
Lost a leg, blew up your face, whatever happened. I know a bunch of military guys, one blew up his face, one blew up his leg. I think you don't need to pay taxes anymore.
Yeah.
I think military heroes should be literally not liable for taxes.
Well, when they deploy overseas in a combat zone, there's no tax on that income.
No, I mean,
so I
when they
agree
get
with
back,
you. If they sacrifice greatly,
that's the biggest sacrifice right there. Well,
Yes.
your son's was the biggest, but they potentially could have ended up just like him.
yes. Yeah.
And it happened every day.
Every day.
Driving down the road.
I'm with you. I think that should be
IEDs.
tax-free income.
IEDs on the street.
Yeah. Where Mark was in Ramadi, there was Route Michigan was one of the main streets there. And they would have daily several IEDs. You couldn't drive down that street. And a year later, after Mark died, I got a video and pictures back from that street where they were actually doing a 5K run along there to honor and remember. It was Afghani sponsored or Iraqi sponsored, but to honor and remember the fallen who lost their lives, whether they were Iraqis.
How do they know they didn't leave an IED out there?
Because they had they'd killed all the bomb makers. They got rid of everybody in there. And again, come back to our government. Some of the stuff we're doing is so lackadaisical. If we put some strong perimeters on something, we wouldn't have all the illegals trying to cross the border, bringing the drugs in here. If they knew there was a consequence to that and they wouldn't get away with it, not just open our gates and say, sure, come on in, there have to be boundaries that are established in everything that we do in life.
Dude, we're going to have to put this episode on Rumble.
Oh, there you go.
YouTube probably shut it off.
Well,
You see what's going on with all the censoring?
no, I've seen some of what's going on, but
Well, it's because we talked about vaccination.
Oh yes,
suppression,
of course.
suppression, or maybe even deletion.
We're the wackadoodles now.
I put up a video with a doctor that was against obviously COVID and the rest of the nonsense, and they deleted it.
Yeah.
Straight up after about 1.5 million views in 2 days, boom, straight deleted
because it wasn't what they wanted us to believe. They didn't want us to see
the truth. And again, now all that doctor was saying back then is now what they're saying now.
Mm-hmm.
But he got deleted, or my video did. Well, he kind of got canceled too, but that's bottom line. Anyway, back to what your son did. Now, Jocko Willink, people know who that is.
Yes.
He was the commanding officer in Ramadi when your son was killed.
Yes.
And, obviously you've been on his podcast, and he's clearly like a freaking war hero himself, wouldn't you say?
Yes, very much so. I think a lot of Task Unit Bruiser, what they did, they were one of the I think they still are the most highly decorated Special Forces unit since Vietnam. Amazing men, at some of the most humble, compassionate, caring men I've ever known. And I tell people Mark's final gift to me was his teammates. And he was my kid who loved to give gifts. And he would hunt and hunt for just that perfect gift. He'd spend hours and he'd come home and he'd be so excited. He'd be like, Mom, you got to see what I got you. And I remember one Christmas he came home and had it wrapped in the store. And as he got home, he's like, Mom, you got to open it. This is so cool. Because he was so excited he couldn't contain himself. I'm like, no, put it under the tree. And I turned around and he ripped it open and opened it. It was a set of gold flatware, not solid gold, but gold in color. And it matched my china perfectly. And I told Mark's teammates not long after he passed, that was my final gift from him, was his teammates. And that was, Chris Kyle was one of those, Jocko was their task unit commander, Leif Babin, who founded Echelon Front with Jocko, Kevin Lace, there's some that are still active that I can't mention, but what a gift those, I call them boys, obviously they're men, but they're my boys, are to me, and that was the final gift Mark gave me.
Well, that's a great gift.
Yes.
Again, the brotherhood I would imagine in there is ridiculous, especially when you're, risking your life every day with people.
Yeah.
Making objectives. So Jocko, though, when you look at him, looks like
tough.
He's in a movie.
Knuckle dragger.
No, if you
don't want to mess him in.
If you think of a badass Marine commander,
and raise that a little
in the U.S. Marine Corps, in a movie, like picture it, and then raise
Jocko.
it a little, it'd be Jocko Willink. Yeah. Your son, he looks like he could have been a model.
Yeah,
he was just he did not look like a SEAL.
Yep. He had an amazing sense of humor.
But what made him want to be a SEAL? He went in, obviously, to the Navy to be a SEAL.
He had a contract to go to BUD/S when he went to the Navy, when he went to the recruiter.
So he wanted to be a SEAL.
He wanted to be a SEAL. And I think his older brother, he was the youngest of my 3 children. His older brother went in the Marines in August of 2000. His brother-in-law went in the Army in October of 2000. So May of 2001, he came home with the orders to go to BUD/S after he got done. And I think, he's pretty competitive. And I think he was like, I'm going to one up you guys. Watch this. You went in the Marines, you went in the Army. I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And that, that's no guarantee just because you get orders that you're physically fit enough, to do that. And they think you could stand a good chance to make it through. That's a guarantee.
Not a lot get
80% of them wash out.
I was going to say, you get through that, you're already mentally and physically superior to most people.
Yes.
It's like, dude, the anguish that I've heard that they put you through. Do you know Ray Kashkar?
I do know Ray, yes.
Yeah, Ray's funny, but they put on something similar that's not even a fraction of it.
Yeah.
And you're like rolling around in the sand. Like, you have to be mentally tough. How did he get so mentally tough? Did you raise him that way? Were you surprised at all?
No, I wasn't surprised. We went through a lot of trials and tragedies. They grew up in a very tough home. Their father had tried to kill me. And so at the age of 23, I went through a divorce, had a 3-year-old, 18-month-old, found out 2 weeks later I was pregnant with Mark, no child support. He never came and saw him, wasn't in their life. And I had the option to, live on welfare the rest of my life. And but that wasn't an option. That's not me. So I would work 2 jobs, 3 jobs just to pay the bills and take care of them. And I was not going to quit. I was not going to give up. we were going to make this through. I'd made some stupid choices in my life, but I was responsible for those. And now I was going to raise my children. Someone else, that wasn't anybody else's responsibility to do that other than their father. He should have been, involved in their life. But we just didn't quit. And then I married again 8.5 years later, and he ended up committing suicide 8 years after we were married. So again, another circumstance that forced me to either make that choice. Am I going to keep going or am I going to give up? And because we always kept going and didn't give up in the tough times, I think that's what built part of that character into all of my children to say, we're not going to quit. We're not going to give up. We do have a choice here. It's like I tell people on August 2nd, 2006, when I was notified that Marc had been killed, I had no choice the news that was given to me. I could have stuck my fingers in my ears and refused to listen to the CACO officer. I could have gone, la, 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 I don't hear you. But that wouldn't have changed the fact that Marc was gone. But I did have a choice how I responded. And for me to curl up in a ball and feel sorry for myself, that wouldn't bring Marc back. It'd physically make me sick. Stress does a terrible thing to your bodies. And that's not how God wired me. So when I can be out there supporting our men and women who willingly would have given their life for me, when I can support their families, when I can support our veterans and our other Gold Star families, man, that's a great day.
100%. And by the way, again, I know that you're out there doing that every day. Folks, if you guys support veterans, military, anything that we're talking about right now, americasmightywarriors.org. You can go throw $10 bill their way, or $100 bill, or $1,000 bill.
Any bill would be great. On a credit card.
Yeah, go support them, because what they're doing is they're going around helping people like your son that were in the military or still are in the military and have to deal with all kinds of issues, situations, and problems. Tell us, what does America's Mighty Warriors do?
So the first program that we started with is our Random Acts of Kindness. And Marc's amazing last letter home, I would encourage everyone that's watching or listening to go read that on our website. It's powerful. The wisdom that 28-year-old man had is far beyond the years that he had. But he talks about, when's the last time you paid for random stranger's cup of coffee or meal or tank of gas? He said we could change our world by doing more random acts of kindness. So we started doing the random acts of kindness even before I started officially the foundation. I'd see a veteran, I'd go up and pay for their coffee or their meal or their tank of gas. Just a way to honor Marc, accept that challenge that he gave us, and then thank those who would give their lives for me. And that we've expanded that program. It goes up to a $5,000 grant. The veteran themselves can't come ask, because we have found veterans who are just going from charity to charity to see what they can take. And that's not who we want to support. If you knew somebody, you could reach out and say, hey, my friend Bob, he's struggling. Their child has cancer. They're trying to make ends meet. They can't work because they need to be in the hospital with their kid.
And the only qualification is they had to have been served in the military.
Had to serve in the military. We just need a DD-214 with an honorable discharge on there. But we usually, within 24 hours, we can have a $5,000 check in the mail sent to them and ready to help.
Honorable discharge only.
Yes, honorable discharge.
What if they were discharged for not getting the vaccine and it was dishonorable?
And that's something that we need to reevaluate on those circumstances, because that is a pretty new circumstance. We haven't had anybody come. Most of those that have asked for help there, we haven't had any that, you did something bad in the military.
Well, again, if you do something bad and you actually get a dishonorable, the question is who determines what's dishonorable?
So we have had a few in our other programs that we've evaluated, that we found out the circumstances and did support them when they're going through our Helping Heroes Heal program, which is our program that is for our veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, many of those suicidal. And we pay for hyperbaric oxygen therapy, hormone and supplement therapy, so natural things that are healing them. And I get it why our men and women want to try anything and everything to get rid of the pain, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, mental. I get that. But so much of what they're trying is just masking the symptoms. It's not healing them.
Like drugs or something?
Well, the VA hands out drugs, that's one of their main programs that they have. And 2/3 of those medications they're giving our veterans have a side effect that says may cause suicidal tendency.
Okay, and again, this is what I'm talking about. I was trying to not beat up the government, but at the end of the day, when does the government get held accountable?
Yeah.
I had a veteran in here who was either sick with cancer or something from a tour where he had to go, I forget where now, but literally the whole base was on a freaking toxic
burn pit
pile of shit or whatever. Yeah. And a bunch of people got sick and died, and it's directly related to that.
Yeah.
And they don't want to say anything. They're not wanting to admit it. And to me, it's like, isn't this the government?
Yes, it is.
Like
on the burn pit, they did pass legislation within the last year addressing that issue. Lord knows how it's working out for them to get their benefits.
The policy.
Agreed. These are simple things that should be fixed. I live in Phoenix.
Like
the Phoenix VA was terrible. That was one of the first ones, that they had a whistleblower come out on. And I'm thinking that was probably 10 years ago. And yet we still have problems. You can't fix that in 10 years? I mean,
well, I've heard horror stories about the VA. And then I've also heard, great stories about the VA. So it's almost like the intent was good, but the execution is not so good. And that's why it's not the government. Like, people think the government is a single entity with a single brain. The government is consistent of a lot of different people. And sometimes they're the wrong people. Yeah, and they should be dishonorably discharged.
Agreed.
But sometimes when the government says, oh, this guy's dishonorably discharged, I don't necessarily believe it. Why? Yeah. Because who's to say what's dishonorable? Now, again, to me, you could say what's dishonorable is not getting a vaccination dishonorable.
No.
But yet if they come out with a dishonorable. So what she's saying without saying is that they work with honorable people, no dishonorable, but they have made exceptions. I caught that.
Yes.
When there's certain circumstances. So if you're listening, you need any kind of help, you've been wanting to reach out. Most of them won't either.
Most of them won't. And please, let me tell those ones who won't, that is not a sign of weakness. It takes courage to stand up and say, I need help. And
not only that, it's smart, MommaLee, because I tell even entrepreneurs the same thing. Like, it's okay to ask for help. Most people think that's a sign of weakness. Most people think, I'm not going to do it. What if they say no? I'll look stupid. I'll feel stupid. But I'm telling you, I've talked to a lot of very wealthy, successful entrepreneurs, and a lot of them asked for help.
Yeah. And again, what a great sign of leadership. How are you going to teach another veteran if you're a veteran, and your buddy comes up to you and he's struggling with suicidal thoughts or he's got a TBI, are you going to tell him, oh, don't go get help? No, that's ridiculous. You'd be helping him. You'd be finding out. If you've done it yourself, you can say, hey, guys, here's what's helping. Here's what's making a difference. This healed me. We've done SPECT scans of the brain before and after. And it's crazy to see the healing that takes place.
What's the charity that does all the push-ups? Because there's like 22 push-ups. Or
it was 22 kill, I think was the one.
Is it 22 commit suicide every day?
The numbers are so different. It depends. A lot of them aren't reported. They fluctuate up and down. I read the suicide reports that come out from the DOD, and it's not a good number, whether it's 22 or 24 or 19 or 18 or whatever. Change it. One a day is too many.
So what do you find is the number one problem they're not able to overcome?
I think the majority of them lose hope. I think a lot of them, there are some physical things that go on. The frontal lobe of your brain is what controls your memory. That's what controls your sleep. That's what controls the emotions. So whether they're raging emotions or no emotions, that's all the frontal lobe of the brain. And that's where so much of your blast wave exposure comes from. So I've got 2 nights I don't sleep good. We would not be having this conversation. I would have already stopped 5 times and gone, I'm sorry, what were you talking about? And it would be, if I had to call on the phone, American Airlines, because they messed up my flight or something, and I'm on there for a half an hour, I'm a kind, not angry. I usually can detach from my emotions pretty well. But I'll tell you what, those days when I don't sleep well, I find myself getting a little, not very nice on the phone. And it's like, who is that woman? And then I realized, oh, you didn't sleep good last night. So if we can get our veterans to where they're sleeping well, to where their memory works, to where their emotions are back in a normal area, they can deal with the emotional stuff at a much better place. And so to be able to provide those things and do those things for them. But I think the big factor is no hope. So many of them are getting out of the military. They maybe get a job that provides an income, but nothing that they're passionate about, nothing that drives them every morning to get up and go make a difference.
Well, there's a lot of us that don't get that.
Well,
It's not just veterans.
Right. I agree.
That's a common issue.
But I think because they've been so extreme in their fight or flight when they're in combat and that adrenaline rush that they get, they can't find anything that's the same back here.
I would beg to differ. I would say that is sales.
That's going to make the difference, huh?
Well, it's as close to combat as you're going to get.
That's true. Sales. I've done sales before, and it can be pretty. Your heart can get pumping pretty big if you think you got a pretty big deal that you're closing on.
And it's kind of warfare, but not as dangerous, obviously.
Yeah, not near as dangerous.
The consequences, you lose your job, not necessarily your life.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying, and it's also the structure. They're used to structure. You know what I mean?
Well,
and
they've pretty much been told what to do. Yeah. You know, your spec ops community is a little different in, their leadership.
What's spec ops? Special operations?
Yeah. So whether it's the
SEALs when you're on the inside, it's just spec ops.
Yeah, well, I've learned a few of these things. Yeah. But, and I think a lot of them that are struggling with whether it's emotional issues or physical issues, and they've tried different therapies and they've tried a whole bunch and nothing's made a difference, then they start to get to the place where they think, I got to live like this the rest of my life.
But they don't.
And I don't want to live in this pain. And so I think in a warped way, they feel like, everybody else is better off with me. And that, if you're thinking about suicide, is a lie. My husband committed suicide almost 29 years ago. And all that does is that multiplies your pain to a mass of people, the people who love you, the people who served with you, the people who are your friends. And that is what looks like a solution to your problem, but it is not. And if you're struggling, please reach out to americasmightywarriors.org so we can help you. There are things that will heal you, that can change your life, and that can save you.
Dang, there's the call to action right there. I'm thinking of a call to action, but you just did it for me.
But again, that's not the only call to action. On average, it's $20,000 for our veterans who go through our year-long program. We've got over 180 in our program right now. So that takes a little bit of money to be able to heal them. And I think
let's try to get you 1,800.
Awesome.
And the money to match.
There we go. But it is so important to make sure we hear in the military, no man left behind. And I do feel like that's what's happening. And when our veterans come home and they get out, and it's like, bye, see ya, thanks for your service. And it's like, okay, my body now that's been destroyed serving you all these years, who's going to help me? Like I said, they go to the VA, they're given prescription drugs, or they're put through exposure therapy. And so many of the veterans I've talked to, that's not helpful. They have to relive the day that their leg was blown off. And then they come in and they're like, okay, well, tell me with more detail. And this goes on for like 3 or 4 weeks in their meetings. And then they're feeling even more suicidal because they keep reliving in a deeper way.
Why are they doing that?
I don't understand why. I don't know if they think.
See, this was back to the government again. It's like, I want to love the government or because I love the country. I do love the country, but don't mistake loving the country as loving the government.
I'm not happy with our government right now. Yes.
And what I don't understand, and again, guys, I would never commit suicide.
Good, because I'd have to come kick your butt.
Well, I know, but I might get suicided for what I'm about to say. But because again, I want to love our government. The problem is our government, in my opinion, it's not a cohesive entity. It's individuals, and we're trying to blame the government. Dude, you can't blame a group of people for anything.
Yes.
Why? Because it's a group of people, dipshit. They're not all guilty.
Right.
They're not all a problem. There's problems.
Yes.
And they need to be held accountable because
that? We're sitting back complaining about it. Are you involved? Are you trying to change anything? Are you going to your school board level? Are you running for office?
Bang. Hey, that's exactly right.
So
that's why I don't bitch about it too much. Because hey, listen.
Because you have a responsibility as an individual who lives here. Mark's last letter home talked about that. He said, "I've realized being over here makes me realize the great country we have and the obligation we have to keep it that way."
Well, again, I do love the country, and I agree wholeheartedly with what he's saying. What happened to him? I've never found out. I keep saying, no, I want it to be fresh.
Yes.
So here's your son. Obviously, he was 28. You said so. He wasn't a kid, but 18-year-old kid. But at 18, he went into the Navy. I assume
he went in. I think he was 20.
Late bloomer then.
22. 22 or 23 when he had gone to college.
That's late though.
Yeah, it is late.
Because again, when I went in, it was 18.
He went to college. He was going to be a youth pastor and had gone to the master's college down in California. Played soccer, wanted to be a professional soccer player. Came home his freshman year and told me that. And I'm like, Mark, you've never played soccer in your life. Didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't afford for him to play, as a kid. But I always taught him, you put your mind to it, you can do whatever, you put your mind to. And we got him a ball machine. My husband had already passed then, so at least we had a little money, but that would shoot the ball automatically. And he would spend 8 hours on a Saturday at the field down at the high school just dribbling the ball, and was in fact trying out for the Colorado Rapids. But he went to the Master's College, then decided he wanted to go try to be a soccer player. And that's when he went back to Colorado to try out with the Rapids there. And then blew out his knee.
Now again, there's no military at this point.
No military at this point.
Yeah, he's just your kid running around, having fun, growing up.
Yep. And blew out his knee, had to have half his meniscus removed and his ACL repaired. And that's when I started to see him reading books and, about SEALs. And again, he didn't have swim lessons as a kid, so he started going to the community pool and swimming a lot. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting. And but he decided he wanted to go back to school for, one more semester, play soccer there at the Master's College. And so went back, and then that's when he came home with the contract to go into the Navy. When
you say came home with a contract, it makes it sound like, someone discovered him and recruited his ass.
No, he wasn't recruited, but it's a contract that you sign.
It is a contract. But
you're making a
when you
commitment
say
to the
he
Navy.
came home to the contract, that would be equivalent to saying that's when he decided to join.
Yes. That's when he went to the recruiting office and signed on the dotted line.
Yeah, so what caused that? Like when I was a kid, what caused it is my girlfriend's dad didn't necessarily respect my hoodlum little punk ass. So he said, if you want to marry my daughter, you're going to have to go into the military.
There you go.
You need to be taught some discipline. You need to prove that you're fucking, a man really.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. And so I decided, and I went down and boom, decided to join. And sure enough, I was going to go in the Navy at first, but then I ended up in the Marines. But there was a point in my mind that made me do it. What do you think his was?
I think when he started reading about some of the SEALs and the things that they'd done, I think every young man, he'd watched a movie in junior high, that was about the SEALs, and he had mentioned then, I want to be a SEAL. Well, every junior high boy does that watches a movie about SEALs. They get the girls, they get to blow things up.
Sure.
It's pretty cool.
It's the coolest job on planet Earth. You're badass.
But when he started reading more, obviously there was something in his heart that said, here's my calling, here's what I'm supposed to do. The competitiveness, seeing his brother in the Marines and brother-in-law in the Army, I think that attracted him too.
Now, by the way, at this point, he joined to be a SEAL. He didn't join and then become a SEAL. He joined to be a SEAL.
Correct. That was his goal.
So he knew up front and in advance, hey, I'm going to go be a badass and get right into the thick of things, because that's where the SEALs are.
Yes.
They're not on the outskirts.
No, they're not.
I like to say they're not cutting potatoes.
No, not at all. Although they may tell you they're a landscaper or something else. Yeah, no, that's not what they do.
Yeah.
That's their cover.
And what's weird is when they're even done being SEALs and they're now back to civilians, they can still do work with the military.
Yeah, a lot of them do go in as contractors after or in reserve.
What they're called.
Yeah,
like Blackwater and crazy
and
shit.
Some of them even do things, in the.
But as civilians, that means you're a badass.
Yeah, it sure does.
When they're like, okay, now that you're done officially with the Marines or whomever, Navy in the SEAL case, now that you're out, come over here for X amount of dollars. Now they can make some real coin though. They weren't getting paid much in the military, were they?
No, they weren't. So
that's another thing I don't get. Teachers need to be paid more. Military needs to be paid more.
Yeah.
Police need to be paid more.
Yeah, agreed.
And when you see these problems within these organizations, like when you say, "Oh, the cops are dirty," not all cops are dirty.
No, but any brand, whoever, whether you're doctors, lawyers, podcasters, priests, whatever, there's a element in there that are not good people. And
100%.
that doesn't mean they're all that way.
But that's because we're all
But
people.
that's the reputation, you know, you look at the police and trying to defund the police and everything
That's
right
stupid.
now. It's because of a few that went off the book. That's not the normal character of our men and women who protect us here at home and our first responders and our military.
And that's who we should be supporting right there.
That's who we should be supporting,
Yeah.
100%. But you ask about, you know, Mark and on August 2nd.
Well, I'm just walking through in my mind, you know, like he's a kid, he's running around, he's having fun, he's a good looking kid.
Yep.
So he's probably got girls and he's, you know, or whatever, but he's enjoying life. And then he says, I'm going to go to the Marines or Navy, but to be a badass. You said both older brothers were in the military.
His brother was in the Marines.
So that's
His
influence.
brother-in-law was in the Army. So on 9/11, all three of my kids' lives were involved in the military. And I could see the handwriting on the wall.
Especially during that time.
I knew we'd have loved ones deployed.
Well, I mean, again, when 911 went off, I was wanting to go back in the military. Or I mean, go to it, I should say. I don't want to mislead anyone telling everybody that I was a Marine because I went to boot camp and got booted out. So I'm not a Marine. But when I was
you do know boot camp is not to get booted out.
Oh, well, hey, I got booted. But you know, at the end of the day, when I talk, it's like, well, when I was in the Marines, because I was, it makes it sound like I'm saying I was a Marine.
Right.
Because some people will say, you know, hey, Semper Fi and all this. I don't want to claim that honor.
Yeah.
I didn't earn it. But I will say, what was I going to say? Damn it. See, my mind fractions off with three things.
Did you have sleep last night? See, that's what I'd be doing if I didn't have sleep.
I had a lot of sleep, which is actually the rare. I normally don't, but last night I did. See, I'm too rested.
Now it messed you up, huh?
Yeah. But what I was going to say is, I was trying to, you know, walk through. He's walking around. He's having fun. He decides, hey, this sounds badass. His brothers and brother-in-law are they in the equivalent of the SEALs, or are they just regular?
They were not spec ops in the branch. They were. Although my oldest son, who was a Marine, was doing some pretty tough stuff. He was teaching a martial arts instructor in there.
What's the Marine SEAL version called?
It's called MARSOC.
MARSOC. And then what's Army's Green Beret?
Yes.
And then Air Force.
Army, I always get mixed up if it's
Army has Green Beret.
Ranger.
Army Rangers too.
Yeah.
But they got Green Berets also, don't they?
I think they still have.
And then what about
I know
Air
the
Force?
Navy's so much better because, you know, that's what I've learned.
Does Air Force have any badass people or just
they do. They have the
pilots?
PJs.
PJs, what is that?
So I don't know if they're guys that wear their pajamas around or no. They really are the PJs. We always have to pick on the Air Force.
What
you know?
are they called?
That's their Spec Ops guys. I don't
Their
know.
Spec Ops are called PJs? What's that stand for?
I don't know what that stands for. That's Air Force. But I know I can do the hoo-yah, hoorah, hoo-ah. And the Air Force doesn't have one, so I had to make it up. It's jacuzzi. They really don't have a chant. I don't know what's wrong with them.
We made fun of Air Force when in the Marines.
Everybody picks on the Air Force. But again,
I always say,
lovingly,
the hardest part
we need
of boot
all
camp,
of them to complete the mission over there. So they're all valued and important.
I used to say the hardest part about Air Force boot camp is the manicure.
But there's some truth to that because when I was in Iraq, I was in bases that were Air Force ones, and the food was so much better at the Air Force.
Well, listen, you know what the truth
Chow
is?
Hall, yeah.
The truth is, now that I look back and realize it, I think the smart ones went into the Air Force because they realized, like, dude, that's where the smart ones go. You know, the Marines, that's where the grunts and the fighters and the dumber ones go. That's where I went. You know, because we want to be.
I think they'd beg to differ with you, but
they would, of course.
But
again, to me, the Air Force was easy, and the Marines was kick ass. So if you wanted to be
very
a badass, you go to the Marines.
Yes.
You wanted to be a smart ass.
Spec Ops
you go to the Air Force.
Yep.
Or you wanted to be a pilot. Like if I went in the Air Force, I'd want to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah, I tried to go in the Air Force to be a pilot.
If I went in the Navy, I'd want to be a SEAL. When I joined the Marines, I just wanted to join the Marines only for one reason. Because for some reason, that's the one branch that everyone said was the best of the best, the Marines, the president's own, you know, and you got to graduate in your dress blues instead of Army greens or your Navy outfits. I never liked the Navy. This is why I didn't join the Navy. Their bell bottoms. My uncle was in the Navy, and he'd wear his bell bottoms and his sailor hat like Gilligan, and I'm like, dude, I ain't doing that. I want the military dress blues with the United States Marine Corps with the red stripe. I mean, dude, it looked tough with the sword.
My son Christopher would agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So, but again, Navy SEALs and Marines, they buddied up a lot, and so did Navy. Yeah. There was Marines on Navy boats, weren't there?
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't finish, just for the record. So I don't want to insinuate that I'm anything that deserves that honor. But so what happened to Mark? So he's over there. He's 28. He's a Navy SEAL. He's been on many tours, I'm sure. Yeah. You're already used to it. Didn't you hate it when he said he's joining?
No, I was very proud of him and very much supported.
See, as a parent, I would be like, you're not going in there. You could die in there.
But if you're doing what God designed you to do,
I know, it's just so scary having your children.
I was very proud of all my kids, and I'm not a worrier or a fretter, so, but I did know when he visited our house just before he deployed, as he was leaving that day, I told my other son who was standing there with me, I don't feel good about this. And he said, neither do I, Mom. He's not a worrier or fretter like me either, but something inside just told me. And I don't know what that was. I don't know if that was God trying to prepare me for what laid ahead, but so when I got the call to come home that night, I knew what was going to face me when I got home. And,
who called you?
My oldest son, Christopher, did. They had actually been trying to find me for 8 hours up in Oregon. I'd moved, while Mark was in the Navy, I had moved down to Arizona. And I know he changed the records. I know he had my correct address, but they were still trying to find me at my old home up in Oregon. And they'd been there about 8 hours and were afraid that I was going to find out on the news. And had one of the neighbors there told them, oh, she doesn't live here anymore. She moved to Arizona. So then they were trying to find me, had gone to my house there. And I was gone that night. I was at my Bible study at my small group, and they'd gone to the neighbor's house and knocked on the door. And she said, well, I don't have her cell phone number, but I know her son works at Lowe's. And so they went to the Lowe's and got a hold of him. And, of course, he served in the Marines. He knew when he came home, if you're wounded, they'll get you to them, not come to you. And he called me, and as I was driving home, I was just like, oh, my gosh, this is not going to be good. And I got to the intersection by my house, and there were probably 3 or 4 ambulances and fire trucks and, several police cars. The whole intersection was blocked off. And as I pulled up on there, I thought, oh, my house blew up. That's all that's wrong. And trust me, I would have rather lost all of my earthly possessions and still had Mark. And to this day, I can't tell you how I got back into my subdivision, but there were no more cars there and no more emergency vehicles. And as I turned the corner, expected to see a black car parked out front. I guess I've watched too many movies because there was no black car. There was no unusual cars in front of my house, just my son pacing back and forth on the sidewalk. And I got out, and he said, Mom, the Navy's here. And I remember just falling on his shoulder, just crying, no. And as we walked inside, they'd been in my home for a while waiting for me to get back. And they said, we can tell by being in your home, you're a woman of faith. And you're going to need to rely on that faith for what we're about to tell you. Your son, Marc Alan Lee, has been killed in action. And as a parent, that's the most devastating news you could ever receive. And I remember trying to process that, trying to think about Mark and his final actions. And we finally started to get phone calls from overseas from Mark's teammates. And Jocko shares this on the podcast, and Leif shares it often, but they're thinking about calling me to tell me and comfort me and give me hope. And they said, when we called, it was me that was comforting them. And started to piece together his heroic actions and learned that it had been 115, 120 degrees in Iraq that day. He carried the big gun, the 50 cal, so he carried anywhere from 150 to 180 pounds in addition to his own weight. And they'd been in an intense firefight for 2 hours. I can't imagine. I've been over to Iraq. I wore the body armor. I felt the heat. Wasn't carrying a firearm. But to imagine how they do that for 2 hours. And we've watched our Navy SEALs do some absolutely amazing things. At times they seem superhuman. But I can tell you they're just as real as you or I are. And I know Chris Kyle told me later, the intensity of the heat and the action and what they went through. But Ryan Joe, their buddy who'd been just severely wounded, fell to the ground. And Mark stood up right in the same line of fire where the sniper had just shot Ryan. He knew he had the big gun. He knew he could lay down some suppressive fire. And his hope was to get the medic up there, because he took one look at Ryan and said, man, it doesn't look good. We got to do something to get him out of here. And the medic was able to get up to the rooftop. And then a second time, as the medic yelled, we got to get him out of here immediately. Mark stood up again in the line of fire, lay down some suppressive fire, hoping to get Ryan down off the roof, which they did, and they sent him out for medical attention. And they climbed in their Bradleys and they headed back to that base that I told you was named after Camp Marc Lee that I got to visit. And as they got in there, started ripping off their gear and, getting some water to refresh themselves, the chief came in and said, we just found 30 of the insurgents that just attacked us. And without hesitation, Mark looked at his chief and he said, Roger that, let's go get them. They'd done their mission for the day. They could have stayed behind. They could have sent Marines, because I've been over there. I know there's a Marine base on the other side of their base. They could have said, get some Marines that are fresh and haven't been in combat. But that's not who these guys are. And so they climbed in their Bradleys and they headed back to that godforsaken place. And they cleared several houses. They went in the last house Mark would be in, cleared the bottom of the house, and he started to go up the steps when they heard him yell, on me. And he was saying, I got the lead on this. You guys follow me. There's something big up there we got to do. And as he did that, he drew fire through a window and stood out in that line of fire to save his teammates. Willingly gave his life to save his teammates. And that trickles down to you and to me and to everyone in America. We have the freedoms that we have in America because of every man and woman who would serve and who would go fight the evil that's out there to defend us and keep us free. And for me, that's why I started America's Mighty Warriors, to make sure those who've served and given so much know that we're here for them, to know they're not alone, to know we won't leave them behind. And there's probably not anything I wouldn't do for those brave warriors who would give their final breath, just like my son gave all of his tomorrow so we could live today. And he ends his last letter home with, to my family and friends, do me a favor. Pass on the kindness, the love, precious gift of human life.
That's what his last letter said?
That's how he ends his last letter home. And he signs it, love ya, Marc Lee, halfway through the deployment. Can't wait to see your smiling faces. And I so longed for that time when he would come home, when we could talk about what he did and about his missions, and just to hug him one more time and see him get married and raise kids and, live a normal life. But he made the choice to give his life so we could be free. And now we need to make that choice back to our men and women and honor them and take care of them. Take care of our Gold Star families through our programs.
How do you do that? Just donate or give time, or what do you do?
They can, all the above. They can make a donation at americasmightywarriors.org. You can set up to give a recurring donation or a one-time donation.
Dude, they don't care if it's $10 or 10 million. I mean, they just prefer that everybody that gets touched by this will go out. They call it 10 by 10.
Yeah.
That's what Dane was talking about.
Yeah, that was Dane's.
Where you give $10 and then you get 10 more people to give $10. Yeah. And if every person that you gets 10 and 10 and 10 and 10, and pretty soon
it multiplies so fast.
It multiplies, and then you guys can go help a lot of people.
Yeah. And if everybody would do their small part, if you can do a big part, great. But if everybody would do something, we can make a difference.
How do you know if they're veterans to buy them coffee or a tank of gas, though?
I'm either on a base, which is usually a pretty good clue, or if they've got a hat on that says, Vietnam vet.
What about those people that are called that go with stolen valor?
Oh, don't even get me started on those people.
There's people that walk around in military outfits saying they're veterans when they're not veterans.
I've had people come up to me telling me they were a Navy SEAL that weren't. I had one guy that ripped the hat off his head, and I said, you've lied to me. You don't even have any idea what BUDS class you went through. Nobody that goes through that's a Navy SEAL forgets their BUDS class.
No.
And lots of times they have served in the military, but be proud of who you were. If you were a cook, be proud of that. Our guys going out need food before they go out to be strong. Don't try to be something that you're not. And that's just...
Well, not everyone can be a SEAL, though.
But that's okay.
Even if they
Not everybody's called to be a SEAL.
But even if they wanted to be.
No, they couldn't.
Like there's a lot of people that
the ones
tried.
that want to, 80% of those still don't make it through.
They couldn't make it. Yeah. They couldn't hack it. They decided, they're like me.
Yeah.
The quitters. And again, nothing wrong with the quitters. They probably, went out and did well.
But again, then you're not out there taking stolen valor.
No.
Putting medals on your chest saying, here's who I am or here's what I did. You just said, I don't want anybody to think I just was a recruit. I just went to, MCRD. I am not.
Well, that's because I have ethics.
Right.
But also because I got cut. Remember when I told you?
Right.
I technically could qualify as a disabled veteran, which makes no sense to me. But technically I could. And I've never done that because number one, I'm not disabled.
Yeah.
And number two, I'm not a veteran, even though I could have rode those coattails.
Thank you for not.
Well, I mean, who would? Why would you do that?
I don't know. I'm with you. That's disgusting.
Weird. It's just weird. Like, why would you walk around and say you're a veteran when you're not one?
Yeah.
So when did this happen? In 2000?
August 2nd, 2006. So we'd be coming up on 17 years this August. But that kid is still changing the world in a crazy
way. Because you're keeping his memory alive. You're doing some serious work. You're out talking to a lot of people.
Yeah, typically I have 80, 90-hour weeks in the normal week for me. We're trying to get that back down. I've got a new admin assistant that are going to be starting, and we've grown a lot, so we're hiring new staff. But I understand that sacrifice that's made, and it's my honor to wake up every day and be able to help those who've given so much for me. We just did this last weekend. We did an event for one of the SEAL teams before they deployed, and we do a Build-A-Bear event and get the kids all bears, and Daddy gets to record his voice in the message. And anytime Daddy's gone, those kids can push the paw of that bear and hear Daddy's voice. And it's something simple, so we invest $40, $50 for each one of these bears. But this was a productive group. They had 130 kids that showed up. But to see the impact that we can make in those families just by something so simple as that. 96% of what comes into our foundation goes back out the door through our programs to our veterans and Gold Star families.
That's high.
We work really, really hard. My board says
it's usually the opposite.
Yeah. And to me, that's not right. And not that, some people are like, it's a nonprofit, nobody should get paid. Nonprofit. I'm like, well, do you want to work 80 hours a week volunteering for us then? And most people are like, I can't. Well, I'm like, okay, so
nonprofit is just a filing status.
Right. But it's still, if you're going to pay somebody, it should be reasonable salaries, not exorbitant salaries. You shouldn't be wasting your money on, huge fundraising expenses. We're blessed that we have a ton of volunteers that volunteer their services. So
you're what's called a real charity.
Yes.
There's real charities out there that are literally doing the work, not for themselves, but for the attendees. Attendees,
yes,
the intended parties.
Yeah.
This being Las Vegas, I forget how long ago, but there was a lot of people raising money for charity, and I think it was 8% was the law, meaning 8% had to go to the charity.
That should be
only
criminal.
92% can go to you guys. It should be criminal. They should have just said, what are you talking about? You say this is a charity. 100% of the money should go to a charity. And yes, the charity has the authority to hire people. So again, getting a job there. Hey, if I work at a nonprofit organization and they're paying me, $2.2 million a year to go give $10 away a year, that's the wrong
Something's
charity.
Not right. Yes.
It's the opposite. Hey, they pay me $50 in my hotel because I go do this that feeds 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good charity.
And people can easily, if you email me, and this should be this way for any other charity, I have a copy of my most recent 990, and I will send that to you. Obviously, it's the one with personal information of other donors' names removed, but they can see where that money's going. If you support animals or kids or whatever year it is that you want to support, ask for the 990, see where your money's going, see how it's being spent, because that's so crucial, so important.
That's awesome. Well, I want you back, but I can imagine you're tired of talking about this. No? Like if I were in your shoes, I every time I could see you getting a little emotional. eventually I'd be like, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, well, I'm not to that place yet. I don't know if I'll ever be to that place.
Well, that's 'cause you know it's helping.
Painful to retell Marc's story, but the more people that hear, the more people that are challenged, the more people that are like, okay, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up, whether it's struggling in my marriage or my finances or at work or my health. You don't have to give up. You can still move forward. Does that mean it's easy? No. This has been one of the most difficult things that, I've ever had to go through, losing Marc. But the impact that's being made in such a crazy way. Like I said before, it's been 17 years. We had a SEAL who went through our programs, probably been about 3 years ago now. And I always try to follow up with the veterans after they're done and find out, how they're feeling, what symptoms have been improved. And he'd gone through, that he's sleeping so much better, and his memory, he can read a book without having to go back 5 times and reread it. And that the anger had subsided, greatly. And I'm like, that's awesome. He goes, well, you saved my life. And I said, well, you were willing to, give your life defending me. That's the least I can do. And he goes, no, stop. And I was like, oh, crap. Navy SEAL Mads is probably not going to end very well. And he said, I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for you and your foundation and the therapies that you provided. You literally saved my life. And when he said it that loud and that bold and had my attention 100%, I thought of Marc running into the line of fire, giving his life to save his teammates. And I was like, oh my gosh, he is still saving his teammates. He's not here, but he is still saving his teammates' lives. And if I don't tell that story, if Jocko and Leif, and if he's not, the stories in the book, the other teammates that have written about him, how are people going to know if we don't tell their stories?
Well, keep telling it. I'm going to have you back. We're going to tell it again.
Awesome.
I got way more questions, but I know we're out of time. I don't want to overstay my welcome.
You don't want to do the 3 hours like Jocko did?
Does he do 3-hour podcasts?
Yeah, the podcast I did was a 3 hour, and that's pretty typical. I think a 3-hour podcast, but it went really fast.
This seems like it went like this. I had a million questions. It's like, dude, but so I want to have you back again.
Awesome.
Can we have you back again?
I would
Where
love
do
to come
you
back.
live?
I live in Surprise, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix.
So you're right there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And folks, listen, if you guys don't know already, you can go to americasmightywarriors.org to help or to get help. And both of them are highly recommended.
And we'd love to have you, come join our celebration for Marc's birthday at Scottsdale Gun Club in Arizona on April 15th. Those tickets are on our website as well. Or if you can be a sponsor for the event. What
date is that?
It's April 15th.
Yeah. I'll drop this faster than normal. Otherwise, this would be out in like November.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. That'd be great.
I'll drop it faster than normal.
That point of it's like, missed.
Yeah,
but
go get tickets to the gun club. That sounds fun
Marc's
all by
birthday
itself.
bash.
And it's Marc's birthday.
Yes.
And by the way, if you guys watched American Sniper, go watch American Sniper. One of the characters in that movie is about her son or based on her son.
Now, they didn't do a real good job portraying him. But
it's still about him.
Yes, it is. That's supposed to be me reading part of his last letter home, which was probably the only real piece in there. But yes, that letter's amazing.
Have you written a book or is
I've got several books I'm a contributing author on. Those are on our website, along with all the other books that Marc's teammates have written about him.
Sounds like a movie's in the works.
Yeah, but there is History Channel did a documentary called The Warfighter, the story of Marc Lee and Charlie Platoon. That's his teammates telling the story. That's them reenacting. That's the real story.
Where do you see that?
History Channel. I think you can even just Google it on the internet
called?
And get it. Warfighter, the story of Marc Lee and Charlie Platoon.
Warfighter.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home and watch that tonight.
That's good. It's a series of 8. Marc was the first one that they did. But
thank you for coming.
Well, thank you.
And folks, if you guys want to follow her on social media at America's Mighty or on one, it's at America's Mighty.
Facebook is America's Mighty Warriors. I'm also under Debbie Lee on Facebook. I think Debbie Lee AMW might be Twitter or Instagram. Social media is not, that's what we say in the military, above my pay grade. Yeah. But yes, we are there and would love to have you follow us. We do have a YouTube channel as well. I did a podcast, done tons of, being the interviewee, but we did the first one where I hosted the podcast, and it was On Me 20, which was Marc's last words. And we had 20 days of 20 guests giving out 20 challenges. So that's on our YouTube channel as well.
What's the YouTube? Where do they find it? America's Mighty?
Oh, you would have to ask me that.
Just Google America's Mighty. You'll find them. You'll find
America's
all
Mighty
the
Warriors
links.
YouTube. Like I said, that's above my pay grade. I should know that detail, but yeah, sorry.
Well, folks, listen, go make sure that you guys support that. And as always, until next time, keep it real.